We will get started in 1 minute.
I see we have Jean from Public Policy and Laurent from Sales.
Great, thank you. We also, for those of you who haven't responded, we have a little informal poll in the chat. If you don't mind answering that question to kind of learn a little bit about the audience and what function within your organization you work in. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. My name is Natalie Runyon. I am a volunteer with the Work on Climate team and proud to be the moderator for today's discussion. I am so pleased that we are being joined by Chisara Ehiemere, who is with NYU Stern's Center for Sustainable Business. But before we get to Chisara's introduction, I wanted to just share a little information about Work on Climate. We are a community, global community, who are committed to doing climate work in our professional and personal lives. We have a community of over 2,000 plus active people who are part of our community on Slack, on LinkedIn, and other forums. We have 2,000 plus people who are new to climate work. We have 30,000 plus community members, mostly on Slack. We have hosted over the last couple of years 6,200 expert mentorship sessions, and we typically have 100 plus 50 events per year that are crowdsourced from our community. So we are so pleased to have you with us. And with that, I am going to introduce our speaker for today, who, like I said, is Chisara Ehiemere, who is part of NYU's Center for Sustainable Business, and she is the senior research lead at NYU's Stern Center for Sustainable Business. And she is the lead on their return on sustainable investment, which is going to be the topic for today. She oversees the ROSI, which means return on sustainable investment methodology, research, and partnerships. She has over 20 years of experience building socially, economically, and economically sustainable supply chains. Chisara also has designed and implemented procurement and sourcing management strategies across multiple industries. In her former role as vice president of the certification of fair trade in the U.S. and as a consultant with Kearney and Accenture. Chisara holds a bachelor's degree from the University of Michigan and an MBA from the Fuqua School of Business at Duke University. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chisara, and you take it from there. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Okay. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be a part of this webinar, and thank you so much for the invitation. So again, my name is Chisara Ehiemere, and I'm the Senior Research Lead for Return on Sustainability Investment, or ROSI. And just to give you a few kind of high-level learning objectives for the next 50 minutes or so that we'll spend together. First, really hoping that you walk away with a higher level understanding of how to use the ROSI framework and methodology so that you can make the business case, determine the value that's being created by sustainability initiatives within your organizations. And then also at the end, we'll go over a really short couple of slides to help you to identify the tools and the resources that you'll need to deepen your understanding. And so this is a, short look at what typically would be a much longer course, and just happy to share it with you. So let's start with the upside, right? So we've heard a lot recently about some companies maybe pulling back on sustainability, some questions about whether or not this is the time to talk about what you're doing in sustainability. We're hearing about green hushing and some things that might make one wonder, should we be continuing to do sustainability? And of course, as everyone on this call knows, and part of why you're here is absolutely. So sustainability is good management, right? So, take out, don't politicize. Sustainability is good management. It helps with managing operational, market, regulatory, and reputational risk. It helps to create innovation and growth opportunities. There's certain sustainability initiatives like waste management that identify operational inefficiencies. There are sales and marketing benefits, abilities to attract new customers and retain the ones that you already have who are changing as they become more aware of the needs for sustainability. There are opportunities to improve supplier relations and resiliency, and also to support stakeholder relations and to maintain license to operate in areas where you may be working. And then finally, there are employee productivity and retention benefits as well. So just wanted to start off by reiterating that sustainability is good management. And the question then becomes, how do we then monetize the benefits of sustainability? Oops. So one of the things that we found in our research is that, while we do know that sustainability is good management, we also, we have studies that show that there is a positive correlation between corporate performance on material ESG issues and corporate financial performance. But what we don't have is as much data that shows causality. And the reason for that is that oftentimes we'll find that companies aren't collecting data in the way that would be needed for them to monetize their sustainability initiative. But at the end of the day, what it means is that sustainability benefits may not be recognized or will not be given the financial opportunity that they do reflect. And so, as I said before, sustainability-driven value creation is something that can be found in lots of different ways within a company. So we have emissions reductions that require improved energy management, which in turn reduces your energy costs. There are water conservation in factories where there was water risk, and that can lead to lower risks of shutdowns, which results in avoided costs of shutdowns. We have opportunities where improved sustainable sourcing practices with suppliers can lead to greater resiliency and stability in your relationships that you have with your suppliers. And that can help with reducing turnover and also reducing friction within the supply chain. And then finally, as I said earlier, existing customers and consumers are increasingly seeking sustainable products. And so having more sustainable products allows you to prepare for and meet the changing needs of your consumers, both today and as they change. So this is the ROSI framework, or the Return on Sustainability Investment Framework. And it's built on the premise that when companies truly embed sustainability, risks, and opportunities into their strategy and decision-making processes, that they will realize improvements in a number of areas that we refer to as value drivers. So you can see that underneath the column, the blue column here that says improve. And those value drivers are risk management, stakeholder engagement, operational efficiency, talent management, and so on. We'll go into more detail about those. But in the process of ROSI, you're going through and you're looking at those value drivers and asking, are there benefits that are being created that are associated with these value drivers for your strategies? So again, if your company is embedding sustainability risks and opportunities, looking at your sustainability strategies and practices through these value driver lens, identifying benefits and monetizing those, we have found that they drive revenue growth, they can drive greater profitability, higher corporate valuation in some cases, but ultimately delivering quantifiable business value and positive societal impact. I will say our tool framework and methodology are focused more on the business value and not as much on the positive societal impact. However, we do recognize the importance of the creation of those, and there are other organizations that work on the quantification of those impacts. So just a little bit more so that you can understand what some of the value drivers are. So the operational efficiency is focused on benefits that optimize corporate and supply chain efficiencies to lower cost and increase price. And then for profits, excuse me. Then for risk management, those are benefits that encourage risk mitigation and resilience within the value chain. Some of those, if we're talking about resilience, will be on the longer term horizon. Some of those may be more immediate in terms of risk mitigation. Supplier relations, as I said earlier, improve relationships with suppliers, talent management, the ability to attract and also to retain high quality internal talent. We are still seeing that that talent is increasingly interested in working for companies that are doing well in sustainability. And so being a sustainable company can help with attracting and retaining talent. Stakeholder engagement, and this can be improved goodwill with NGO communities or broader communities in which you operate. We have innovation, and we define this as creating new revenue streams that use sustainable products and business models. So the ability to bring in revenue that you would not have if you had not created these more sustainable initiatives. Media coverage is earned media, so free media stories for doing well and getting media interested in talking about what you're doing. And then finally, sales and marketing and customer loyalty, as we talked about before, which is focused on increasing the volume of sales, and then also retaining your existing community of consumers and customers, recognizing that their needs are changing as sustainability becomes more popular. Okay, so as I said before, it sounds, these are pretty straightforward benefits. But what we have found is that many companies are not monetizing the return on sustainability investment. Oftentimes there isn't the data, or if there's sustainability data, it's not in the format or the level of quality that companies may need to measure. Sometimes the sustainability strategies are not tied to return from the beginning. So setting a target for reductions in greenhouse gas emissions, for example, but then not tracking the investment needed and the benefit that's created by working through a plan to actually realize those reductions. And that can sometimes happen where strategy and execution sit in different business units and the two aren't connecting as regularly or frequently as they should be or could be. And then some benefits are intangible and difficult to measure. So earlier I said talent management. You might say, oh, yes, we've heard in a few interviews that some interview candidates have asked about sustainability. But if you're not tracking data and having HR communicate back to say, hey, we're getting more and more candidates that are interested in this in sustainability, and comms and website folks saying we're getting a lot of hits on our sustainability site and pages. If that data isn't coming back to a central entity to calculate kind of what that means for the company, then that's something that loses the ability to quantify something that is seemingly intangible, but yet can be made tangible with the right data. Another issue that we see is that finance, and this has changed since I started at CSB. Finance has an evolving role in sustainability. When I first started, we would say, oh, finance didn't really get that involved. What we're seeing now, though, is that finance is involved often, and often it's focused on reporting and disclosures as opposed to helping to make the business case for investments in sustainability. So that's an opportunity there. And then the last point, and one that we continue to hear about, is resilience, right? So we recognize, and I'm sitting in New York, the sky was orange a few summers ago. We see there floods in places where there previously have not been floods, a growing number of billion-dollar disasters within the United States. But it still can be difficult to then build that into steps that are being taken in the long-term planning. So that's something that, again, is evolving as more and more data comes out, and definitely in the built environment, we're seeing some movement in being able to bring that together. But those are just some examples. So now getting into how you would go about bringing to life some of that value. So I'm going to be giving you a process, what you will be able to do at the end, and there'll be a small, a short structure that you can use. What I'm going to be doing is talking you through the approach that we take when we're working with companies and helping them monetize their sustainability initiatives. So the first step is to identify the material sustainability issues and strategies. I would bet most companies that are represented on the call today have done multiple iterations of materiality assessments within their companies. This is really important because you need to make sure that your sustainability issues and strategies are the ones that are material for your industry and also for your company. So you don't want to be investing in the wrong things or investing in the lower priority areas when you would get more value investing in some of the others. And then we go from strategy, so what is your greenhouse gas reductions as an example, to the practices, because you need to understand the practices to be able to monetize benefits. And so that's where you say, well, what exactly is it that we are doing in service of that strategy? So we have a target to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. It's material to our industry. Then what exactly is it that we're doing? What are the steps that we're taking to reduce those? So in agriculture, is that changing to regenerative agriculture? Is it introducing a circularity strategy? Are you doing more in renewables? But line iteming these out, in order to then understand what are those benefits. And so when you get to those practices, you're defining benefits by looking at those ROSI mediating factors or value drivers. Is there a potential customer loyalty benefit here? Is there a potential benefit for talent management? And you're going through systematically looking at that list. Not every, and in fact, there hasn't been one practice that we've looked at that has had all of the benefits, right? You may just see one or two, or you may see more, but you might end up saying, the ones that really are the meatiest or have the most value may just be one or two. Once you define what those benefits are, you quantify those, we'll talk about that, and then you monetize those. So we've done this really quickly just for a variety of industries. It can be applied to any industry. What I will say is that we have seen that the application is different in some cases, depending on the industry that you're looking at. So a good example is when we looked at the customer loyalty and sales and marketing lens in our decarbonization in healthcare systems work. You don't have the same level of choice with healthcare providers that you do with buying a tube of toothpaste. And so some of the more of the value was in some of the other areas than in sales and marketing and customer loyalty for hospitals due to that the fact that there isn't as much choice. And so that's just an example of where there may be differences within industries. So something also for you to be thinking about. And if you're listening in step 1, you would have already gone through to make sure that something was material for your issue, for your industry. And so those that would already be the first step in figuring out how ROSI application might be different for your industry. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 we've gone through. And so let's think about this from the lens of the automotive industry. So, oops, sorry about that. So I don't have a car because I live in New York City, but this is an industry that most of us have some level of familiarity with. And so the first step that we took in working on projects with the 3 partners that were just identified is that we went through to identify the material issues within the industry. And so at the time, and we're actually reconfiguring this and adding more recent research to this. At the time, we identified strategies around resource consumption and waste management, carbon emissions, conflict minerals. We just basically developed a laundry list of all of the different strategies and key drivers for the industry. And then we went through step 2, where we identified, excuse me, step 2, where we went through to think about the sustainable strategies, the sustainable practices, and the benefits, as you would have recalled from the earlier description. So the sustainable strategy, and just using this as an example, is improve waste management. You can't monetize or start to monetize improve waste management because it can look so many different ways, right? So what we did then is say, what are some of the practices that you're doing in service of waste management? So one such practice is recycling paint and solvents. So then you're getting closer to something that you can define benefits for. And as we said before, what you do is you look at the value drivers. Are there any benefits of recycling paint and solvents that would relate to risk management, any stakeholder engagement benefits? And you're going through and you're looking through those value drivers to see where there may be benefits. And so the benefits that we identified were reduced cost for wastewater and toxic waste disposal. There was reduced cost for paint and solvent. So you're buying less virgin paint and solvent because you're recycling. And then revenue for recycled material. So if you're sending off materials and selling those, then that's revenue. So the benefits here both reduce costs for the company and then also generated revenue for recycling materials. So just again, to get you thinking, and when you are doing this for initiatives within your company, thinking sustainability, the strategy, practice, benefits. And so here are just a few others. So for reduce resource consumption, we have improved employee relations and other strategies that you then identify practices for, and benefits. We won't go into those details, but just wanted to get you thinking in that way. Okay, and so then the question becomes, how do we go about quantifying these benefits? And then the question becomes, where does the data live within your company? And I saw before we started a few folks kind of putting the different areas within the organization where they work. And so the data really could come from lots of places. Right. So if you're looking at recycling materials in the factory, you're looking at factory operations, facilities maintenance, accounting and finance. I saw some folks on the webinar are from the finance function. They may have data. At a minimum, if they don't have data, they can help you to say, is this something that fits within the way that we typically analyze and run the numbers? And if not, how might we think about this differently? So the finance function is an extremely important part of the process. Procurement, so you can get supply data, understand contracts before you go off and make a change. Are there existing contracts that need to be honored? IT, legal. Legal can be really good for helping understand where there may be changes in a regulatory environment. Going back to the previous example with recycled content, are you going to be required to recycle more? And if so, are there savings then that you can put in as avoided costs? And then finally, human resources. They can help with talent management type issues. Human resources and data from there can be used along with other types of data to generate benefits. So I show this slide just to say you should be thinking very broadly about where you might be able to find data for benefits. And then finally, monetizing. So this is where you're going through and calculating the benefits for the benefits that you've identified, so that the dollars and cents behind that. So this is an example that we actually worked with, where we had waste management that reduces costs and generates additional revenues, as I said before, and then the practice of recovering, reusing, and recycling waste, increasing the number of landfill-free sites, and having a dedicated group to identify reuse opportunities. So with those practices, the first one in particular, the results were cost savings due to lower spend on virgin materials. That's getting data from plant operations on how much, what are some of the rates of use of virgin materials versus recycled materials. You get costs for virgin materials from your procurement team. You're also looking at net revenues from sales to recyclers. That would be information that you can get from sales. A reduction in water costs by using recycled water. Plant operations would have data on that as well, and including maybe from finance, how much the water costs, and then calculating that through. And then energy savings due to lower use for recycled versus virgin materials. Oftentimes, and we've seen this in, I guess with chemicals, we've seen this in certain types of plastics or composites or fiberglass, that there may be lower energy required for heating up recycled content versus virgin. So you're seeing then that's engineering that's getting involved to explain how some of these changes may provide benefits. And then finally, reduction in waste disposal cost. And so here we had EBIT impact of 235 million. And you can see more about the automotive programming on our website. But I just wanted to walk you through the example so you could have the step-by-step what you should do. So I'm going to spend a few minutes just quickly going through some examples, again, to get you thinking about where there may be savings in the initiatives that you may have underway within your organizations. And then we're going to spend just a few minutes looking at a template, a really basic template that you can use in thinking through. So circularity, this one is pretty obvious. It drives operational efficiency. So you're reducing inputs and waste disposal costs, new product sales, in some cases, consumers or B2B may be looking for circular products or a certain percentage of recycled content, reduce supply chain risk through closing the loop. And so this would be a case of, if there are, we hear about tariffs. So if you're using more if you're using more within the company, then you're not as exposed to tariffs, or you're reducing your exposure there. And then in some cases, you have the ability to make sustainability claims. So this was all of these are on the website if you want to learn more, and including a few templates that you can go in and put data into and build, make them, customize them for your own use. This was an example of what we see in fashion increasingly, which is circular take-back programs. And so this is Reformation choosing to partner with a third party, ThreadUp, for a circular take-back program. So it's basically outsourcing the collection and sales of products that are your brand. And in this case, we found that there was a net benefit of 1.9 million, benefits from profit from the partnership program. There was Reformation profit. They gave out a coupon for them to buy new Reformation clothing, customer acquisition cost reduction, and then they got some media pickup for doing it. This was a while ago. In today's world, so many companies are doing it that it doesn't garner as much media interest, but at the time it was something that was important. And if we have any folks on the call who are from healthcare systems, this was an Advocate Health operational efficiency project where we looked at reprocessed devices, and the value that was created there was a 10-year net present value of 20.3 million. And it's basically going through the process of changing from single-use medical devices to reprocessed medical devices, FDA approved, of course, but going through that process, instituting pickup programs, et cetera. So that also is on our website if you want more information. Employee satisfaction, safety, and well-being. We have found drives productivity. Sustainability can improve retention and lower recruitment costs, reduce risk of employee lawsuits, and then also just good corporate reputation. So that's something to think about. With REI, which is an outdoor cooperative that sells tents and outdoor clothing, bicycles, etc. They had a program where they gave employees time off to spend outside, which was in line with their purpose. And they found that giving that time off helped to reduce turnover and hiring cost, increase productivity amongst high performers. And then even after taking out the expense of giving employees paid time off, there was a net benefit of 34 million. I will, because I did see that there are at least a couple of HR folks on the call. We were able to do this because HR was collecting data from the employees on the importance of these programs. And so one thing that HR can be doing, if they're not doing it already, is making sure that there is a sustainability related question or series of questions in the annual employee survey so that you can understand. You may find out that a very large percentage of your employees are very interested in sustainability, and maybe one of the things that keeps them with the organization, and that would be something that could be monetized. So just something to think about. And then our last one is just looking at how sustainable sourcing commitments can drive value is with increased market share, premiums, and loyalty. I'll show you some resources at the end for any of you on the call that may be in CPG. We have data showing that sustainably marketed products in CPG in 36 different categories are growing at 2 times the rate of conventional products. There are premiums associated with that as well. Sustainable sourcing can also help with reduced reputational, operational, and market risk, regulatory risk as well, and then resilience. So we come back to this other idea of helping, and this is particularly important for agriculture. If your supply chain, if the farmers that you ultimately source from are more resilient, then you as a company will be more resilient. You'll have higher quality suppliers that are prepared for a changing environment, and that's particularly important. Again, longer term, but if you're not making those investments, then it's a lost opportunity. And so we did this. There was a project that we did with McCormick's, so the spice company, where we saw benefits for sales and marketing, lower cost of capital, risk management, and earned media, which we were able to monetize. So I want to quickly get you to a place where you at least have something that you can take away to use in addition to what we have on our website. So to summarize again, you start off by identifying a sustainability initiative that your company has implemented or is planning to implement. So let's get away from the larger materiality assessment. Let's assume that that's been done and there are initiatives that your company has implemented or is planning to implement. Maybe those that either are at risk of losing funding, maybe you're trying to make a business case for expanding something that you've piloted or expanding from one physical location to another. But just to make this tangible, you would identify a sustainability initiative. List the practices that are involved in those initiatives. So the way that we just talked about it. So you have your strategy, what are you actually doing? And then what are those benefits that are associated with it? And then you walk through the value drivers. Is there a sales and marketing benefit? Is there a customer loyalty benefit, talent management, et cetera? And then once you've done that, you can work across departments to determine the data that's available or that you can start to collect to be able to quantify those benefits. And then finally, and I have a very short slide on this, is monetizing. And so we will monetize anywhere out from, I think we've done 5 years, and we've actually, for a real estate project that we looked out a lot further, right? For an investment in a hospital with a geothermal well. So the time frame needs to match and be in line with the initiative that you have in mind. And this is the type of format that you can use. So what is the strategy, practice, value driver, benefit? How can you monetize it? And where does it live in your company? When we do this in the long format, you could say, who am I actually going to go and talk to after this meeting to go and get more information from? You can go through and step through that process. Here we said improve health and safety. A practice might be investing in health and safety training. A value driver there could be operational efficiency. A benefit would be thinking about reductions in workplace accident costs. And then you can monetize that per the slide that I'm going to show you. So in this case, and these are just illustrative numbers, for investing in health and safety training, we have 4 different benefits that we would fold into the evaluation here. So reduction in workplace accidents and related costs there, avoided employee hours lost, avoided cost of hiring interim workers, savings from discounts and insurance premium payments where they exist, and again, illustrative. Some of the data will be in your company, some will be outside of your company. So you might say, well, what are some of the, what's the inflation rate outlook that I should be aware of? What's the average recordable incident rate for my industry? And am I doing better than or below? What is a typical lost work time rate due to absences? And how do I get, how do I compare and how do I close the gap? And again, just showing you that data, yes, will primarily come from inside your company, but then there are other opportunities to look outside if you don't have those. So that's it. Here are some resources, and then we can go to questions. I think I'm right on time for questions. And so you have the ROSI website has industry cases. It has frameworks for apparel, for food and agriculture, for healthcare decarbonization and others. And it has Excel tools that you can plug in. There's a employee engagement, employee well-being tool that you can go in and actually plug in information about your organization and get a calculated output as well. Articles, and then the Sustainable Market Share Index also is on the website, where you can see it's actually been updated now, but you can see the price premiums, the growth of the different sustainably marketed versus conventional, et cetera. So that's it. And I've really tried to, I know I've thrown a lot at you. I've tried to condense what would typically be at least 3 or 4 times the length into something short and sweet, but happy to take questions now.
Thanks, Chisara. First, we do have a couple questions in the chat,
Okay.
but I'll start with one that I know I hear a lot in the work that I do. And most organizations are making capital investments in technology and stuff like that. And so when I like to think about what are the core business processes where you can easily add on a sustainable lens, like the capital investment mechanism, if your organization has an investment committee or whoever is making those decisions. And I find that if you can embed like a sustainability questions in your capital project form, right, then you're starting to get the whole organization to embrace sustainability as part of a key decision making process, right?
Yes.
So number one, what do you agree with that? And what are some of those other core business processes that our audience could take away that you have found successful in kind of embedding, to help embed sustainability in core business?
Yeah, so I definitely agree with the example that you have. In some cases, companies have implemented an internal cost of carbon so that it's at least, in addition to saying this is what this is going to cost over the long term, you also have to indicate what the cost of carbon is as a part of that process. How the company then how much weight the company gives to that is, up to the company, but that's a good indicator to at least get started around thinking about that. I'd say, again, for HR, also starting to think about collecting data from employees and candidates around sustainability is something that can be done. And then, supply chains and procurement. In many ways, some organizations are actually with procurement and strategic sourcing. Some companies have been doing this for some time in terms of saying, okay, we want to make sure that we're sourcing sustainably. What's important though is to make sure that you are defining sustainability correctly for what you're sourcing. So you want to make sure that your sourcing strategies for your sustainable sourcing commitments are hitting the right material areas that will help your company succeed into the future.
Great, thank you. There's a couple of questions asking about how do you go about quantifying some of the less tangible aspects of the drivers, such as enhancing employer brand perception, stakeholder trust, and that type of thing.
Yeah, so for those can be tricky. And what we would do for employees, I think I've talked a little bit already just about you have to understand first how important sustainability is to those stakeholders. I don't think this is the case, but if you had an employee base that did not care about sustainability, then it would be hard to monetize. But if you collect data about the sustainability value or the value that your employees put on sustainability, then at least it's a starting point for saying, okay, if they value it a lot and we're doing well, how does this then help with retention? And if it's helping with retention, what are the avoided costs of high vacancies, individuals working two jobs while the other job is being filled, and so employee morale and loss of productivity, costs for bringing in consultants and that kind of thing. So it's starting with understanding for other stakeholders. It's understanding how important those sustainability is to those other stakeholders as a starting point, and then figuring out a way to apply a financial lens to that.
And usually you'll encounter some of those aspects in your materiality assessment.
Yeah.
So are there resources on the ROSI website that are credible business cases that people may be able to go to and model?
Yes. So the cases go through the process. So what is the process that the ROSI researchers went through in identifying the benefits and quantifying them? And then they're also Excel models. Some of them are very bespoke and specific to a particular product line, and some are more general. But there is a wealth of information on the website.
Great, thank you. There's a couple of questions in the chat related to applying the ROSI framework in size and the different organizations based on size. So do you have examples of applying the ROSI framework in an infrastructure project, for example, would be one. And the second one is, are there any case studies, if you will, applying the ROSI framework in startups?
Very interesting. So we don't on the first. I do not personally have experience in that. We did have, and this isn't maybe as big a utilities example where it was looking at a company's decision to exit coal before they were required to by law in Canada. So that was a kind of bigger, but yes, for the size that was just indicated, we have not. For startups, we haven't done this with startups either. We've done it with companies, and I'm going to say that were born sustainable, though, where they're coming up, they're not changing a practice to become more sustainable. They're starting off with a more sustainable approach. And so if you're doing something like that, what we recommend is that you create a kind of business as usual scenario that would be the more conventional way. So you have your business model and the way that you operate, and then you would contrast that with the way that you would have done it if you weren't starting off in a more sustainable way. And you can use that as a starting point to think about some of the benefit that you're creating. Not sure if that gets at what the individual who asked the question was looking for, but that's what we've done.
Okay, thank you. We have a couple specific questions here, so I'm just going to read it straight off. So how do we isolate benefits resulting from investments in sustainability? So for example, if product sales increase following a large investment in sustainability, but at the same time, there have been improvements in like technology, how do you isolate the benefits
Yeah.
from investments in sustainability?
Yes. Great question. So as part of all of this, and so you create your model. As part of all of this, though, there's a process of meeting with in this case, you would have your cross-functional group where you would go through and you would look at applying an attribution factor. So that would be one way where, technology is saying, well, okay, it was more sustainable, but we also added these other attributes that were interesting, and we have this data that shows that the customer was that interested. And so you may say, okay, we'll split it or we'll do 30-70. So that's one way, is the attribution factor. And then also, this is slightly different, but since we're talking about these factors, we also sometimes will put in a certainty, kind of a sensitivity analysis type work where we're saying, yes, because this is unknown, we think, we're getting closer to certainty the farther out we go. So there will be the ability to also put in, we're only 30% sure. And then when you look at the numbers the next year and the different inputs, you might say, okay, we've gone from 30% to 70. So these are living. Ideally, this is not a design the model and make a decision and go away. It's design the model, yes, make a decision, but then also tracking over time to update and see how, as you find out more about what the future holds, how the numbers hold up. And that can
I've also
using it. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I've also seen where you're actually showing the different scenarios, right? Where you're saying based on your confidence level. So that's an option as well. A similar related question about, cross collaboration across multiple departments, and how do you avoid double counting the same benefit across value drivers?
Yeah, so that would also be making sure that there are these cross-functional teams that are looking at models. So typically in projects, and you would do this in your organization as well, we're starting off by saying, doing the 5 steps, but in that first step or second step, we're bringing folks together to say, this is what we're doing. And we're going to be creating one model, but we hope that this serves as a starting point for the organization to change the way that it's thinking about these efforts. And so that would be that starting point. And then when you create a model, you're then bringing those stakeholders back together again to say, wait a minute, we already accounted for that. Take it out of this particular area. And so it's not something that you should be doing in a vacuum, because you rightly point out that there are ways that the model could go wrong if you are.
Yeah. So obviously, next question, obviously the environment is quite a bit different, certainly in the US, and we're seeing, the simplification of the omnibus package impacting the corporate sustainability reporting directive and the corporate sustainability due diligence directive within the EU. So and something that I'm seeing is that sustainability is more looking at a risk management tool, because the financial materiality lens is much more quantifiable, right? So in your work, I'm sure you've experienced skepticism or pushback. And there's a question about how did you handle this, or how did you respond to the pushback or skepticism from executives who when you've done the analysis, and what areas did they question and how did you respond?
Yeah, that's a great question. So luckily, I mean, if we're working with a company, they're at least we're not getting into questions of, the climate isn't changing or anything like that. It's typically more so focused on numbers and sales and marketing if there are any sales and marketing folks on the call, will typically be more skeptical, particularly if they're going to be held to selling and marketing the volumes that are in the analyses. So we do tend to see from their perspective where they're saying, oh, wait a minute. Yes, I did say that customers are asking for this, but let's have that start off small, and then, let's keep it low, and then we can come back and revisit next year. That's where we've seen some pushback. And then I'd say, like I said, the level of certainty for some of these things. So if you're saying, oh, we think that legislation is going to change, it's, well, how soon? We think it's going to be 2 years. Well, no, we think it's going to be 5 years. Okay, then we'll adjust the model for that. So that's typically what we see. Does that answer your question?
I think so. Another related question to the how do you know the ROSI benefits are directly related to sustainability actions, and how do you solve for the contribution versus the attribution? So I think comes back to that double counting question, but kind of asked differently. And so I didn't know if you would suggest something different.
Yeah. I actually won't. I'll further complicate it to say that a lot of technical innovation these days incorporates sustainability. And so, it's really, I think, companies need to evolve from kind of grabbing it's because of sustainability, or it's because of these attributes, to really understanding that ultimately designers and engineers should be designing the things that will delight us, while also trying to make sure they're doing so in a more sustainable way. So it's less about wanting to claim that this is all sustainability's doing, to really trying to make sure that it's at least included in the discussion, because oftentimes sustainability is just seen as a cost, and the benefits are as we've been talking about for the last hour, are what can sometimes be harder to overlook. So just making sure that it's included in the calculus at a minimum is important.
Okay, well, look, we had a couple questions that we were not able to get to. Some of them were like, how do you take ROSI mainstream? Some questions about how do you apply the ROSI framework when you're using other frameworks like GRI and ISSB/SASB. So thank you so much, Chisara, for sharing your knowledge with us. I did put some additional information in the chat. Chisara, there was a question about, will you be sharing the slides? And if you could send those in email, and I'll put it in the Slack channel as a follow-up, if you're okay with that.
Okay. Yeah, I will. I'll send through some slides. Sure.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much again. And thank you to Heba, who was on our tech team. And thank you to you, our attendees, for joining us. We hope you found this valuable. Have a wonderful day.
Bye, you too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.